Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. A home to 8 million artifacts in Tallahassee, Florida is set to close under recent government spending cuts. Members of the Southeast Archaeological Center is one of several park service leases that are slated to be canceled in the near future, and this is home to 8 million artifacts in total and would be a devastating blow to the Southeast Archaeological just history, the general story.
I
Yeah,
mean, generally, it's not like as if we already had issues with storing artifacts right now.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's probably a great point to just kick off on,
Mhm.
Aaron. The curation crisis is something that is plaguing institutions and repositories across the country where we just don't have enough room for all the stuff that we are excavating. There's not enough places that are temperature and climate controlled that would preserve the artifacts, nor do we have enough trained staff to care for it all.
yeah.
God forbid we fucking just not touch, like somebody just doesn't touch shit.
Yeah, the the Park Service isn't filling up these buildings with random assortments of objects for the fun of it. They are doing so because there is a very real artifact housing crisis.
Yeah, you think
And
the
you just,
people housing crisis
yeah,
is the only housing crisis we have? No.
yeah, no. This is, you know, on the plus side, the tenants really don't have to take up a lot of space on this one. But, this isn't something that the Park Service is doing because it felt like it or because Tallahassee is a wonderful summer home location. It's not. It they're doing this because the things that they find in the parks have to go somewhere. You can't just chuck an arrowhead back into the dirt. You can't destroy it the way you would a piece of trash because it's not trash, it's history. And there seems to be a very major lack of distinction between trash and history going on here with the proposition of shuttering locations like this.
Well, I do want to make one small addendum to what you said. Catch and release archaeology is a real thing where they do just place the artifacts back, but it runs the risk of being looted or taken or some other thing. But this comes as a part of wide sweeping changes that are occurring right now in America under the Trump administration, which includes a desire to try and downsize the overall size of the government and cutting certain leases from the payroll. And this just happens to be a part of it. Unfortunately, the National Park Service has been very heavily hit by these cuts, along with the buyouts that have taken place and many employees that are being fired that were probationary. So we're seeing a lot of attacks on our parks and on.
Again, because this happened in the first administration.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where we generally try not to get too political on our channel. However, this is one of the instances where cultural heritage became a banned word, became something that can't be put in official documentation, and we're seeing direct attacks on repositories where park employees conduct great research. They put together very informational displays, museum pieces. This is where a lot of that stuff goes when it's not actively on display or it's being researched about.
See, when they're talking about cutting government spending, like downsizing the government, it's literally talking about just getting rid of people who are actually just doing their jobs. Like, just like they have no political affiliations or anything. These are people who are just doing things that they love. They love being part of the National Park Service. They love being outdoors and teaching people about these places. That's the people they are like the Trump administration's cutting. This ain't a gun. Like when they talk about cutting government spending and cut government side, like bringing down the size of the government, they're never talking about politicians. They're talking about the people who just make shit run.
It's just upsetting from a historical and cultural heritage perspective because facilities like this to store these artifacts are very unique. You oftentimes special built facilities to directly house those items. They are made with proper climate controls, temperature controls. They have certain you know, uh, certain protective measures in place, both security wise with gates, locks, vaults, other facilities, but they also have moisture detectors, they have fire detectors, they have sprinkler systems, smoke detectors, anything that could potentially damage these artifacts to an irreparable extent is oftentimes in place in these facilities because, unfortunately, most of this stuff was implemented after a disaster, after something had already occurred in a different facility.
Think about it. Like, what was it? Not even a few years ago that a Brazilian museum caught fire and burned down.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, Chicago doesn't have most of its early documentation because the first courthouse burnt down in the Chicago fire.
Yeah. And like just to show you how specialized a lot of like everything that goes into a lot of these facilities are, you need certain types of glass in your window and certain types of light bulbs in your ceiling in order to not destroy everything with the destructive ray of the sun.
also, you have to have special light bulbs. You can't just use a regular run-of-the-mill light bulb. Even at my old job, when we would put, because the lights had to constantly be on, if you had like we had like we'd have like sticky notes or labels next to stuff within a year or two, even with like the fluorescent lighting, it fades really quick.
And
Just imagine what just imagine what 200-year-old documents had need so they don't fade.
Aaron, did you ever get stuck in the stacks when the sensors went off and all the lights shut off?
No, but I've been stuck back there when somebody turned off the lights and I'd be like, uh-oh.
For those of you watching at home, Aaron and I both used to work at a regional archive near where we lived, and that was a place that had a lot of these measures in place. And one of the ones that often caught a lot of us lovely little interns was the fact that the lights were on a timer so they weren't left on forever.
Yeah,
So
so
a lot of people, it was a mandatory rule to have your phone on you in case you needed to call rescue.
that or use it as a flashlight to go up to the front and, turn the switch back on.
But this unfortunately comes with a pattern of other things that have been attacking our park service, the NPS, which the employee downsizing, the buyout offers, along with other things that are trying to sell and overall downsize a lot of pieces of protected land, really puts some of our cultural heritage at risk because a lot of what's in our national parks are culturally significant or just naturally significant. I mean, if you ever get the chance to visit some of our national parks, they are some of the most beautiful parts of the country. Just this past weekend, I spent it up at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, an area of Lake Superior coastline that has been completely untouched.
God forbid, like something doesn't have to make a bunch of fucking money to be considered valuable.
You know, I think I have a way that might not stop this whole trend, but it might save this one. Mr. President, if by some strange twist of fate you end up watching this, I want you to know. I want you to just stop and think about what's happening to this facility. You love the weird and strange things that come out of this country, the funny things, like we all do. And if facilities like this close down, where will we get headlines like Florida man disgraces his own heritage? Or Florida man dresses crocodile like Revolutionary War soldier? Think about it.
It ties back to this sense of American identity, and I'm going to pivot from that, where Theodore Roosevelt himself is the founder of the national parks because he saw on his travels in North Dakota and eventually out to Yellowstone in Wyoming just this natural beauty that struck a chord with him that made him realize this should be protected and not developed, and it should be there for all future generations to witness and to experience. And
You want to know something interesting about that trip?
Hmm.
He took that trip out there after his wife died in childbirth,
Yeah, so I
and
mean,
he ran away. And guess what? He found he found his love of life again in nature, in the wilds. And guess what? Guess what we desperately need? We need to touch fucking grass. We need the grass.
and presidents from both parties
And the trees.
throughout history have expanded the parks, which has been a massive success both for nature and for the general public because during COVID, when most things were shut down, the parks experienced massive growth because we saw unprecedented amount of people going out into public lands and going to explore nature. They are getting outside of their houses. They were disconnecting from the internet to go explore these pieces of land. They were going to witness these parcels that were set aside for their better interest. And wildlife has massively recovered in some of these areas. Badlands National Park is home to one of 2 wild buffalo herds, and it leads to one of the greatest spectator sports, the Buffalo Roundup, every year, and that also comes with its own fair share of headlines from tourist tossing, where tourists get way too close to the buffalo and get flung like 10 feet in the air.
Honestly, at that point, I think it should just be a competition. How far can the buffalo throw you?
It just
If you
Not
live,
doing-
you get a trophy.
We're not doing human pumpkin chunking.
Listen, I think this is the only way to save the national parks because all of us Americans collectively, unfortunately, our collective IQ is getting lower, and it doesn't help that we're getting rid of the Department of Education. If we can generate support for the national parks by letting these idiots let buffalo destroy their ribs in an attempt to win bragging rights because they survive, I think I'm okay with it.
Aaron's going the Roman route, trying to bring back the gladiator games where it's man versus beast.
The thing is, the animals would be treated fine. Like the animals would be probably be treated a lot better than the people. Let's be honest. If
Yeah,
I
the
had my
animals have
way.
their bills paid for.
But I think that's probably a good point for us to wrap up. The whole basis is, regardless of party affiliation, seeing our park service be gutted like this is heartbreaking. It's a tragedy, and it's something that our
You don't get
forefathers
it back.
our forefathers have worked to protect, and it is centuries in the making that is being undone. And on that lovely note, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.